You are standing in Times Square, and the biggest screen above you isn't advertising a car or a soft drink. It's playing a music video in Korean, and the crowd underneath it, mostly people who don't speak a word of the language, is singing along anyway, perfectly syllable by syllable. Scenes like that, once almost unthinkable, became increasingly common because of one group. BTS wasn't the first Korean act to chase global success, but they were the group that broke through a barrier the industry had struggled to overcome for decades. They didn't just become famous. They changed what an entire country's culture, economy, and global image were capable of becoming. BTS didn't enter an empty landscape. Before them, artists like PSY had already shown that a Korean language song could become a global phenomenon. But a viral hit is different from building a sustained global fanbase. BTS turned that possibility into something much bigger. A long-term international community that followed albums, tours, live streams, merchandise, and even learned the Korean language. To understand how unlikely this was, you have to remember where BTS started. They debuted in 2013 under a mid-sized company, not one of the giant, well-funded entertainment conglomerates that had already tried and mostly failed to crack the English language market. Cultural economist Keith Howard, who has studied the Korean entertainment industry for decades, has pointed out that BTS succeeded partly by doing something the bigger labels hadn't fully committed to: building a direct, unfiltered relationship with fans online, years before major Western labels took social media seriously as a primary tool rather than a marketing afterthought. Picture what that actually looked like in practice. While larger companies treated interviews and public appearances as tightly scripted, one-way broadcasts, BTS members ran their own social media accounts, posted casually, and responded to fans directly in real time, in a way that felt startlingly personal to millions of people who had never had that kind of access to an artist before. That relationship, built patiently over years rather than manufactured overnight, became the foundation for something economists don't usually get to model. A fan base that didn't just consume music but organized, translated, and promoted it globally, essentially for free, because they felt genuinely invested in the group's success. Here's where the economics stop being abstract. Research from the Hyundai Research Institute has estimated that BTS's economic impact on South Korea extends far beyond music sales, reaching into tourism, consumer goods, and the broader value of the country's global cultural brand. The exact figure depends on how that impact is measured, but the scale is significant enough that BTS became part of serious discussions about South Korea's economic and cultural power. This wasn't a niche subculture generating pocket change. It became a measurable force that businesses, economists, and government agencies could no longer ignore. Picture what that economic footprint actually touches. Tourists specifically visit Seoul neighborhoods featured in BTS content, generating hotel bookings, restaurant revenue, and retail spending that government tourism boards actively track and promote. Korean skincare and fashion brands worn or mentioned by members see documented international sales spikes. Language learning apps have reported measurable surges in people studying Korean, specifically motivated by wanting to understand BTS lyrics and content without subtitles, an effect linguists have started referring to as a genuine soft power side effect of fandom. This is exactly the kind of soft power the South Korean government had been trying to cultivate deliberately for decades, long before BTS existed. Political scientist Joseph Nye, who coined the term soft power itself, has noted that South Korea's cultural exports, K-pop, television dramas, and films, function as a deliberate extension of national strategy, a way of building global goodwill and cultural relevance that pure economic or military strength can't achieve on its own. BTS didn't create this strategy. They became its most successful and unexpected proof of concept, succeeding on a scale government planners had hoped for but couldn't have engineered directly. Now here's the counterintuitive twist worth sitting with. BTS's success didn't happen entirely outside the traditional K-pop system. It happened through a version of it, run by their company, HYBE, formerly known as Big Hit Entertainment. HYBE still uses the same trainee development model that shaped Korean pop stars for decades, years of vocal, dance, and media training before debut, the same model that has drawn documented criticism for the intensity and pressure it places on young performers. BTS's success didn't dismantle that system. It made HYBE one of the most valuable entertainment companies in the world, giving the traditional model more resources and global ambition than it had ever had before, not less. There's a second twist that shows just how deeply BTS's story is entangled with ordinary Korean life rather than floating above it. Like virtually every other Korean man, BTS members became subject to the country's mandatory military conscription, and after years of public debate over whether an exemption was warranted given their documented economic and cultural impact, the group ultimately began fulfilling their service obligations like any other citizen. Watching some of the most commercially valuable entertainers on the planet pause global careers to enter basic training was, for many observers, a strikingly concrete illustration of just how uniform that particular institution remains, regardless of who you are or how much revenue you generate. Picture the fuller arc, side by side. A group of trainees debuting in 2013 under a company most people had never heard of. A government tourism board years later actively promoting neighborhoods because BTS fans specifically requested to visit them. A university language program reporting enrollment increases directly tied to a single fandom's curiosity. A publicly traded entertainment company now worth billions, built on the same training pipeline that produced the group in the first place, now exporting that model even more aggressively to launch its next acts. Each piece connects to the same underlying shift. Korean cultural production stopped being something the world occasionally sampled and became something a global audience actively sought out. So can South Korea simply build a second BTS? Here's the honest, less comfortable answer. Government agencies and entertainment companies have poured enormous resources into trying, and several K-pop acts since have found major international success. But scholars studying the phenomenon consistently point out that no formula fully explains BTS specifically. The years of unscripted digital intimacy with fans, the particular timing of social media's rise, the members' own songwriting contributions, and a fandom mobilization that companies can encourage but never fully manufacture on command. You can replicate the training system. You cannot simply replicate the specific, accumulated trust and audience built with these particular people over more than a decade. You started this picturing a Korean song playing to a crowd in Times Square who didn't need a translation to sing along. Now you know that moment wasn't a fluke of catchy production. It was the visible result of a company's patient strategy, a government's decades-long cultural ambition, and a group of performers who happened to build something more durable than a hit record. A direct, sustained relationship with millions of people that neither money nor planning alone has ever fully managed to reproduce since.